Welcome to Harlow on Healthcare. I'm David Harlow, and I invite you to join me by my virtual hearth as I sit down with healthcare leaders to discuss building the future of healthcare. Today, my guest is Pete Harris. Pete is the executive director of the Austin Blockchain Collective. He has over 40 years of business and technology experience, focusing in recent years on business applications of blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. He co-founded the Austin Blockchain Collective and launched it at South by Southwest in 2018. He's also founder and principal of Lighthouse Partners, a boutique consulting firm working with global IT innovators to create go-to-market strategies for transformational technologies. Welcome, Pete, and thanks for joining us.
And thank you. Thanks for asking me.
So 25 words or less. Can you tell this history and literature major what is blockchain?
25 words or less. In that short amount of time, blockchain is a very special type of database. It's a database that is immutable, is shared, and which uses consensus rules to cover its updating.
Okay, that sounds like a good thing, but in my experience, using the term blockchain when speaking with health wonks can often elicit one of a number of responses, either the eyes glaze over or something like, sounds cool and futuristic, but I bet it can't do anything for me today that's any better than what I have currently working. I'll offer maybe a middle road and see if we can start off by looking at what blockchain can really do for us today in healthcare. Where can we start with blockchain in healthcare? And what can it do better than what we're using today, better than the old systems that we're using? Things that come to mind include like super basic stuff like provider directories. Is that something that's working today with blockchain? Is that something we can use blockchain for? What else can we use it for?
Yeah, there are provider directories. Certainly, is one of the early applications that we see, especially by organizations like the Synaptic Health Alliance that are doing that route. There are probably 3 or 4 other healthcare applications out there. I think a common thread for all of them, and this is kind of where blockchain does have a value, is that it's really because of the attributes of a blockchain, which I kind of just very briefly touched on just now. It's actually pretty good for allowing different groups, different companies in groups to work together with more trust than they might normally have. And that's because transactions that are stored on a blockchain have been vetted by a number of them. Any change to the blockchain is immediately obvious to all of them, and the participants actually know they're working on the same data and not different copies. So because of that, blockchain lends itself to those kind of applications where a number of different participants are involved, and that's definitely the case in quite a number of different blockchain applications. And you mentioned provider directories being one of them, which by its definition involves a lot of players who are individuals as part of that directory. Do you want me to run through maybe?
And those have traditionally been like an absolute and utter mess. And these directories are usually completely useless. But I imagine something built on blockchain, updated through this sort of shared trust arrangement, sort of trust but verify is what you're describing, that can be useful if people work on it.
Right. It certainly compared to the traditional directories, which as I understand it, are somewhat of a mess. Kind of the newer blockchain-based approaches are more accurate and easier to update, and have a real benefit to the healthcare space in terms of providing easy and ready access to sort of what is pretty fundamental but kind of vital information. So that's certainly a good one.
So what are some other things that are doable today using blockchain and working with the healthcare system as we know it today?
Sure. I'll go through a few which I am aware of, and I know companies are involved in these, and they've developed offerings, and they've got customers for these offerings. So that kind of makes them at least somewhat real. The caveat being it is early stages with all of them. Let's go through a few of them. Clinical trials and management of clinical trials and studies. So there you're coordinating different players involved with managing those trials. You definitely want to keep data authentic and make sure it's not been tampered with, especially the results of trials. You can imagine why there might be instances where organizations involved in trials want to change the results. Well, with a blockchain, if they try to, everyone will know that they've done it. So that's one area. Another area which is maybe aligned a little bit to the provider directory is credentialing of providers. So where a person who might not be a doctor, they could be an anaesthetist, they could be a person with a specific skill and a highly qualified nurse. When they go to work for a new hospital or medical organization, it takes actually right now a long time for them to go through all of the, I guess, compliance rules before they can begin work. And so we've seen the development of credentialing tools where different parties, if you like, attest that a person has a particular skill or qualifications or has worked at this place. And those credentials can then they're stored on a blockchain and can be reused. So as that provider maybe moves from one area, one hospital to another, or maybe they're working for a number of different medical organizations, they can be onboarded far more quickly, which is good for the hospital because they're earning revenue from them. It's good for the provider because they're earning revenue. It's good for the patient because it means someone who's skilled can be there and treating them faster than is the case now. So there are a couple of areas. One area that's got a fair amount of publicity recently is that of tracing and tracking pharmaceuticals, which is really bringing the world of healthcare into the world of supply chain management. And there's been a few attempts in the past to really automate what is a very paper-based, error-prone, fraud-prone process of manufacturing pharmaceuticals and getting them to patients. And I think there was legislation passed as long ago as 10 years. I think it's got a horrible name, like the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, and it was passed by Congress, and not much happened until relatively recently. The Food and Drug Administration, which has to implement this thing, kind of said, well, not a lot's happening. We're going to really give the industry a kick and get them to get together and put together some pilot systems, not necessarily using blockchain, but quite a number of the ones which they brought on board as pilots have used blockchain. And these pilots really are focusing on things like managing recalls of drugs. So if a drug has been found to be maybe ineffective or manufactured incorrectly or has been tampered with, that's one area. Focusing on the resale of pharmaceuticals that have not been used for their original purpose. So there's been a few different applications. It's quite the entire business of pharma supply chain is quite a big business. We know that pharmaceuticals, some of them can cost a lot of money. And so because of that, they certainly attract bad players. So those have been interesting pilots. There's been a few consortia put together to run those pilots. They're actually at the stage where a number of them are coming back and reporting early findings. There's one pilot involving IBM, a company everyone knows, KPMG as a management consulting, Merck as a producer of manufacturer of pharmaceuticals, and Walmart as a retailer. So they were involved in a pilot, and that just actually issued their first report. It was relatively straightforward criteria for success, but what they determined was that, in fact, yes, a blockchain is useful for maintaining a common record of products and where they are in the supply chain in different sort of players, and they determined that patient safety had been improved, because when things go wrong or when a bad drug is found, pretty much immediately all of the players involved are told about that, and so there's sort of alerts produced from the system that really gives all the players good information about what to do. So I think there's a few different areas there that we've seen here and now where we've seen blockchain used for positive healthcare outcomes. So,
do you see an opportunity for using blockchain in healthcare records, or are we too far away from that?
There definitely
patient records.
Yeah, there definitely is opportunity, and the caveat to that is we know that the patient record, I guess, infrastructure is complex. It involves different players. It involves many different silos of information. It also involves some large companies with vested interests. So if we take all of the good business reasons out why blockchain might have some headwinds, the fact is that it does, as a basic technology, allow data to be shared between different groups, and it allows the data to be kept in an authentic way, and it allows the same data to be shared, and it allows that data to be agreed upon by a number of different individuals. So the basic technology is there. So I think it's just getting over all of the, if you like, the headwinds to do with, in partly, vested business interests and just embedded, entrenched systems in place that are just there and difficult to change.
Yeah, many have said it's not a technical problem; it's a business problem, and blockchain may be one technical solution, maybe more elegant than some of the others, but it's still a business problem at its heart. I think you're confirming that.
Yeah, it is. It does in some way. It has the potential, though, to change the rules in some way. Again, the caveat is early days, but there are a couple of companies out there who are using blockchain along with cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies being a kind of currency that is used on a blockchain. They're generally used on a blockchain by players who want to use a blockchain, or they're used on a blockchain for systems that form part of the blockchain that perform processes like validation, so that these cryptocurrencies have a real value, and because they're often listed on exchanges, they actually have a value outside of the specific blockchain they're being implemented on. That means that you can use cryptocurrencies to reward someone for doing something. So the sorts of rewards that might happen is if a patient wants to provide their personal health information, they can be rewarded in a currency. That information could be a visit to a doctor, so it could be kind of HIPAA type information. It could be their genetic information that they can be rewarded for. They could be rewarded for things like actually taking medicines and proving they've done that. Or it could be linked to their Fitbit and show that, yes, you have done these healthy exercises today. So we're seeing a little bit of a change where patients actually have a chance to sort of fight back and regain their data and be have monetization of their data. Extremely, extremely early days, but it's beginning to happen.
If you're just tuning in, this is Harlow on Healthcare, coming to you on Healthcare Now Radio. I'm David Harlow, and my guest today is Pete Harris, Executive Director of the Austin Blockchain Collective. So, Pete, I understand that you've come to healthcare relatively recently, and I'm wondering how crazy it looks to an outsider.
It looks crazy to this outsider, but in some ways, I'm not an outsider. So to healthcare, yes, absolutely. Until a couple of years ago, I didn't understand any of the processes involved in healthcare, apart from being a patient of the healthcare system. But as I began to learn more about healthcare, and I was very lucky to talk to lots of startups and people that were generous with their time and taught me things, I realized that healthcare is at its heart a business involving data. And it's really become very data-centric. And that I took some comfort from that, because for many years I've been involved in the world of the global financial markets. So Wall Street as the prime example of a place where financial markets live and breathe. The financial markets are absolutely a data industry, and have been for a number of years. There's a famous quote from the mid-1980s by the then CEO of Citibank, who said, "Information about money is now as valuable as money itself." And I sort of took that at heart and realized that actually the world of healthcare is really moving very much in that space as well, where healthcare is fundamentally a business driven by data. And sure, the data is used for arguably far more useful things than making hedge funds more money, but it's still very much a data-driven business.
Right. So if we identify healthcare as a data-driven business, what are the implications for healthcare? And how does that mean blockchain is more useful, more important?
It certainly has an important role. Blockchain in general is a very good way to secure data and data sets, to ensure those data sets have not been modified, not been tampered with. So that gives them value in terms of being reliable and authentic. If and even beyond healthcare, in just about any industry where you have analytics, and especially these days you have artificial intelligence, you absolutely both of those kind of applications work well if they have a lot of data to work from, and if that data can be authenticated and shown that it's not been changed, that makes blockchain a very useful tool to be able to use.
Sure, data provenance and data integrity are indeed very important.
Right.
Do you see any of the early companies on the field working in the AI development space or helping in managing the data that's needed in the AI development space?
They're beginning to, and it's, again, caveat is early days, but certainly the use of blockchain in AI especially, is being now sort of understood. And there are AI companies out there, and some involved quite extensively in healthcare. I'm in Austin, Texas, and there's a company here called Cognitive Scale. This is not an advert for them, but they're here. They're an AI company that's pretty established here, doing quite a lot of work in healthcare. And they're beginning to realize how blockchain can be very useful for them and their customers in ensuring that data sets that haven't been modified. So, and there's going to be others as well, for sure.
So is there an ecosystem now in Austin? And it sounds like you've been there for a while, though you don't have that Texas twang in your voice.
Right. I've been in Austin for almost 11 years. I was in New York City for 15 before that, and actually I don't have a Brooklyn accent either. But is there an ecosystem in Austin? Yeah, there is. There are actually, and this surprises most people, there are upwards of 100 companies here in Austin involved in the blockchain space. They are mostly pretty small companies, big startup scene. There are a few larger companies. IBM has got quite a big blockchain presence here, as it happens. And IBM's been very significant both in blockchain technology and actually in healthcare. So it's been good to have them here. But yeah, definitely is an ecosystem. There are a number of those who are involved in different ways in health and healthcare as well. It's still an emerging ecosystem, if you like. We have an organization here, part of University of Texas, called Dell Medical School, which has a real focus on population health. I like to refer to them, and they'll probably disagree with me. I think they're a big data company with a hospital attached, because they're very involved in data sets and understanding data and analytics on those. And they're beginning to look at blockchain technology as well. And we've been working together with Dell Med to kind of cross-fertilize what the industry players here know about blockchain and what Dell Med know about large data sets. So that's early days, but that could be a fruitful collaboration.
Right. Is there anything that leaps out that's sort of worth talking about in terms of clinical applications?
The only thing I can think of is that there is some interesting work going on in the open source space, which we'll be hearing a bit more about in coming months. IBM's been involved in an open source platform for healthcare. They've talked about it at a few industry events. So it's not secret, but it is the details of it are quite interesting. They'll be working with the Linux Foundation, which is a big open source governance organization. So that can be interesting, because we know open source software is fundamentally free to adopt and to at least experiment with. And so this could be an interesting model. And what they're developing is something that will be owned by participants in this and not by IBM. So not an advert for IBM either.
Okay. We're keeping this segment of Harlow on Healthcare commercial free with Pete Harris.
Right.
Pete, to wrap up, I'd like to ask you, if you were to wake up tomorrow and find yourself 5 years in the future, is there one thing that you would hope or expect to find has changed drastically?
I both hope and I expect for individuals to have a lot more understanding that the personal healthcare data that they have, both clinical and genetic, etc., they realize that they own it and it has a value. And if some organization wants to take that data and do something with it, that it's got a value. And it may be used for very good things, but it's probably going to make someone extremely rich. So there's no reason not to benefit in that upside.
Okay. Well, there's certainly a lot of folks who are talking about that today and trying to socialize and expand acceptance of that idea. And here's another technology that may allow that to happen more easily.
Yeah, certainly expect that to be the case.
Well, great. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks for having me. Been great.
You have been listening to Harlow on Healthcare. Join us at healthcarenowradio.com. Let's continue the conversation on building the future of healthcare together at #HarlowOnHC. I'm David Harlow, keeping the fire going and holding a seat open for you. Until next time.